Good morning. Just to let you know that we are recording the webinar this morning. And again, good morning and good evening to all, and welcome to the Trinitario Cocoa Webinar Series, Episode 1, where we will be exploring opportunities in the fine flavor cocoa paradise. I'd like to give salutations at this point to Senator the Honorable Paula Gopi-Spoon, Minister of Trade and Industry, Senator the Honorable Clarence Rambarat, Minister of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries, Your Excellency Peter Cavendish, Ambassador of the Delegation of the European Union to Trinidad and Tobago, Ms. Franca Costello, Chairman of Invest Trinidad and Tobago, Professor Pathamanathan Umaharan, Director of the Cocoa Research Center, the University of West Indies in St. Augustine, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, members of the media, cocoa enthusiasts, investors, stakeholders, welcome, good morning, and good evening. Ladies and gentlemen, it really gives me great pleasure to welcome you today to this first session of the Trinitario Cocoa Webinar Series 2022, again titled Exploring Opportunities in a Fine Flavor Cocoa Paradise. My name is Sekou Allen. I am the president of InvesTT, and I will be chairing the session for you today. So just a bit of background on the webinar and how it emanated. In just about November of last year, InvesTT was approached by His Excellency, Mr. Peter Cavendish, Ambassador Delegation of the European Union to Trinidad and Tobago. And he expressed a very, very keen interest in exploring and positioning Trinidad and Tobago's cocoa opportunities in the context of European supply chains, markets, and investors. The ambassador was quite passionate about this subject and clearly knew the European market for cocoa very well, and also knew the landscape in Trinidad and Tobago from a cocoa perspective very well. And so we were very happy to partner with the ambassador in the first instance in considering the execution of this webinar series. Further to that, a team from InvesTT has had the opportunity to tour various key cocoa facilities hosted by Professor Pathamanathan Umaharan, Director of the Cocoa Research Center at the University of the West Indies, and you will be hearing from him later. Those facilities included the Cocoa Research Center, the International Fine Cocoa Innovation Center, the International Cocoa Gene Bank of Trinidad and Tobago, and a major aspect of these tours really centered on Trinidad and Tobago's unique varieties of the fine cocoa, much of which remain to date as untapped economic potential, which we want to start the process of releasing here. This webinar will be the first in a series of webinars to target foreign direct investment from the European Union and other continents. And other partners collaborating on the project are UWI's Cocoa Research Center and, of course, the Caribbean Export Development Agency. Before we commence this morning sessions, I've been charged with the duty of taking you through a couple of housekeeping matters that will make your experience today a seamless one. As I mentioned earlier, we are recording this session, so that you know, please ensure that your mics remain muted while the presentations are in progress. Use the Q&A tab at the bottom or the top of your screen to type any questions you may have for the panelists. These questions will be sent to our moderator, who will lead the Q&A with the audience. So please, again, type your questions in the Q&A section. There will be 4 poll questions during today's session, and I encourage you to participate in the poll questions as well as the Q&A session, which you will type into your Q&A section. At the end of today's session, you will be asked to complete a brief feedback survey. I encourage you to do so, as it would help us plan our topics for the upcoming webinars in the series. If you experience any difficulties with the webinar platform, please post your comment in the chat for the attention of our hosts, who will be paying attention to the chat and attempting to sort any issues you may have out. Without further ado, please let me introduce our session moderator, Ms. Jessie May Ventor. Jessie May is a seasoned broadcaster and media professional with 30 years experience in the media. Many know her as a host of several local radio and television morning shows over the years, with her most recent stint as host of The Morning Brew on CNC3 last year. At present, She is part of the news team at Guardian Media Limited in Trinidad and is broadening her experience with a foray into cyberspace, working on the online platforms for the Guardian newspaper and CNC3 television. Apart from the media, Jessie May has also worked with various government ministries and agencies, as well as the United Nations in the corporate communications field. I now hand you over to Jessie May.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to episode 1 of the Trinitario Cocoa Webinar Series. I'm Jessie May, the moderator for today's proceedings. I want to extend a salutations to Senator the Honorable Paula Gopi-Schoon, a Minister of Trade and Industry, Senator the Honorable Clarence Rambarat, Minister of Land, Agriculture and Fisheries. Also want to extend greetings to His Excellency Peter Cavendish, Ambassador of the Delegation of the European Union to Trinidad and Tobago. Salutations to Ms. Franca Costello, Chairman of InvesTT. Salutations as well to Professor Pathamanathan Umaharan. He is Director of the Cocoa Research Center at the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine campus. Also, salutations to all our specially invited guests, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, investors, farmers, entrepreneurs, and stakeholders in the cocoa industry. A warm welcome to my colleagues in the media who are attending this session. And ladies and gentlemen, everyone, hello. A couple of quick housekeeping items before we begin the discussions, just to let you know that, yes, we will be polling you during the course of the proceedings. So you will see a poll question pop up between the panelist presentations, and you'll have an opportunity to respond to our poll then. The other point that I want to encourage you to do is listen closely to each of the presentations that are being made here today, because you will have an opportunity to pose questions that may arise from what you hear to each of our panelists. So take a note of what pops out at you, jumps out at you, and in our Q&A session a little later on this morning, you will have an opportunity to engage with our panelists. Now, without further ado, let's get the session started. We have as our first panelist, the chairman of InvesTT, Ms. Franca Costello. She is the director of this, the National Investment Promotion Agency of Trinidad and Tobago. She's a strong advocate for investment in medium and small and micro enterprises. So she's all about entrepreneurship, and she encourages public and private sector support for entrepreneurial initiatives as an important solution to the diversification challenge for Trinidad and Tobago. Without further ado, you have the floor, Madam Chairman of InvesTT.
Thank you, Jessie, for your introduction. And yes, I do strongly advocate for SMEs and entrepreneurship in Trinidad, and that's why the Cocoa webinar is a very exciting place to be this morning. I would also like to extend my salutations to the Senator Honorable Paula Gopi-Schoon, the Minister of Trade and Industry, and to the Senator, the Honorable Clarence Rambarat, Minister of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries, as well as Your Excellency Peter Cavendish, Ambassador of the Delegation of the European Union, Trinidad and Tobago, Professor Pathamanathan Umaharan, Director of the Cocoa Research Center, the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine, and of course to all of our distinguished guests, and welcome, special welcome to the media. As chair of InvesTT, I am pleased to participate in episode 1 of the Trinitario Cocoa Webinar Series in collaboration with our valued partners, the Delegation of the European Union to Trinidad and Tobago and the Cocoa Research Center. Trinidad and Tobago has a long history of cocoa cultivation dating back to the 18th century and has maintained its reputation for producing the best fine or flavor cocoa in the world. And I'm confident that every Trinidadian and Tobagonian will express a sincere, heartfelt on when it comes to our cocoa, as we all have a special place in it, as it has a long-standing position in our history. This webinar is most certainly timely since it brings together the potential for entrepreneurship and investment that would revitalize the industry to meet the growing global demand for the world's most sought after cocoa. Trinidad and Tobago's history with cocoa is marked with significant achievements and successes, which include that we are 1 out of 8 countries in the world to be certified as producing 100% fine or flavored cocoa. Trinitario cocoa is highly sought after by many international cocoa and chocolate connoisseurs, fetching premium prices. We are home to the oldest cocoa research facility in the world, the Cocoa Research Center at the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine campus. And its director, Professor Umaharan, is here to speak on the magnificent work they are doing with regard to innovation and product research. The Cocoa Research Center is also the custodian of the largest public collection of cocoa types in the world at the International Cocoa Gene Bank, Trinidad. Trinidad and Tobago is the current record holder for the most international cocoa awards, winning 8 global awards for excellent flavor and quality since the inception of the competition in 2009. And some of our most recent awards were received for commercial samples from Trinidad and Tobago at the 2021 Cocoa of Excellence Awards in the silver and bronze category for Central America and the Caribbean. With the renewed stimulation and interest in TNT's cocoa industry, we expect further successes, which includes investments through joint ventures by local and international investors, which include chocolate manufacturing factories to produce branded specialty chocolates targeting the global niche market, commercialization of a state-of-the-art cocoa innovation laboratory to back the growth of the fine or flavor cocoa industry, distribution of cocoa varieties both regionally and internationally, and of course, agro-tourism projects. At InvesTT, we stand ready to facilitate investment into Trinidad and Tobago's cocoa. We are the National Investment Promotion Agency with a mission to attract, facilitate, and retain investment in the country. We provide facilitation services in 3 stages. In the pre-investment stage, InvesTT's team will provide potential investors with data analytics on their industry of interest. The team will clearly outline the requirements for registering and operating a business in TNT while providing information on the financial benefits of doing business in TNT. InvesTT aims to provide investors with turnkey answers and options to the 3 major questions that investors seek: land, finance, and human resource capacity and capabilities. Once investors have made the decision to establish an operation in Trinidad and Tobago, our team will navigate the regulatory and approval procedures to ensure an efficient and effective process in setting up operations, including land and building options and human resource recruitment. We continue to work with investors providing aftercare services, which help to resolve any potential issues and create further business linkages and identify new opportunities for further expansion in Trinidad and Tobago to ensure your business grows and expands. During this webinar, you will hear more from the other panelists about land availability, funding options, agricultural incentives, and innovative cocoa research support for your investment projects. I fully expect that today's session will be beneficial to you as you consider Trinidad and Tobago the ideal location for your cocoa investment. Thank you and have a great webinar.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, for your interesting words. And if there are any questions for Madam Chairman, remember to use the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen to place your questions, and we will bring them up at the appropriate time. Now, I have for you the first poll question that will be posed, and you will have an opportunity to respond to it. The first poll question: do you have an investment in Trinitario Cocoa, an investment interest in Trinitario Cocoa? Do you have an investment interest in Trinitario Cocoa? You have an opportunity to respond, yes, no, or considering. And once you do, we will proceed to the next presentation. And we are very happy to have our next presenter. He is His Excellency Peter Cavendish, Ambassador of the Delegation of the European Union to Trinidad and Tobago. He was accredited ambassador to this country in July of last year. And he hails from Dublin, and he has worked EU institutions since 1995. He's headed up many important institutions in the EU, including in the finance and humanitarian aid area. And he will be speaking today on a subject about which he's quite passionate, investing and exploring opportunities in Trinidad and Tobago's Trinitario Cocoa, and strengthening those opportunities between Trinidad and Tobago and the European Union. Without further ado, Your Excellency, you have the floor. Apologies, Your Excellency, you need to unmute your mic.
Very sorry. Okay, I should start. It is a real honor and a privilege to be here today, and I wish to thank both the honourable ministers for their support to this joint labour of love, which in fact is to promote and support the Trinidad and Tobago cocoa product. I shall continue. At this point in time, we are having a 115 billion market for chocolate each year. Half of all of the world's cocoa is in fact consumed by Europeans. Europeans amount to only 5% of the world's population, yet we do have a love affair with chocolate. This love affair, it's a market where quality really counts. EU consumers will pay a premium to have the world's best cocoa, and in fact, Trinidad and Tobago's cocoa is without any doubt the best in the world. But the production has been reduced for various reasons. Historically, there was disease at one point in time, and of course, the economy went in other routes due to high success in many areas, including finance and fossil fuels. Nonetheless, we are now here today because there is, in fact, a real value investment opportunity. Premium cocoa can go from up to $12,000 per ton. This is a gigantic reflection on the quality that can be obtained and which has been obtained in this country in the past. I think whereas in the past we also saw agriculture as something separate from industry, agriculture is now an industry today. The agricultural business is in fact enormously wealth creating. The technology in agriculture reflects the technology in other areas. There's the use of application, there's the use of advanced engineering, there is the use of quick response readers, which allow the consumers to see every stage in the process in the wealth creation, in the product creation of key cocoa products. The European Union is looking to help its partner countries, and we're in this country for 45 years. And post-COVID, we consider that this sector is a key one, which will allow for a premium product exports to gain foreign currency by satisfying quality consumers, and as I repeat, the half of whom are based in the European Union. I shall continue. In the past, the European Union has supported Trinidad and Tobago to develop the world's largest gene bank. Between 2,300 to 2,600 different types of cocoa are stored in this country. There is no other such gene bank anywhere else in the world of such magnitude. The European Union has supported Trinidad and Tobago to develop the world's best cocoa research center. The European Union has supported Trinidad and Tobago's small and medium enterprises to meet EU standards in the past with training and support. The European Union has also supported TT's Caribbean Research Institute. This is the #1 in the Caribbean. Trinidad and Tobago and the European Union have an economic partnership arrangement, which allows Trinidad and Tobago to export its products tariff-free to Europe. I shall continue. The EU is willing to continue its support and is actually assisting small and medium enterprises in this country through its innovation funds. At this point in time, we have 64 million Trinidadian dollars, about 8 million euros, available to assist small and medium entrepreneurs to develop their products. This can be the use of solar energy, for example, to dry cocoa. This is instead of the historic use of other types of generators. With this, the carbon footprint is lowered, but in addition, the quality of the cocoa is even better than its magnificent state as it already is. The European Union can assist third-level education capacity now. This is through its Erasmus Plus funds. Worldwide, the European Union is spending 26.2 billion euros between now and 2027 to bring students to Europe to study at European taxpayers' expense. In addition to bringing students to Europe, we are putting additional emphasis on the capacity building between educational institutions. So if there's agricultural institutes in Trinidad and Tobago that wish to partner with Europe, if there's chocolatier schools here in Trinidad and Tobago that wish to partner with Europe, we can make funds available to help with that. The European Union will also assist infrastructure development worldwide via the Global Gateway. We are now spending over 300 billion between now and 2027 in a mixture of grants. The European Union itself does not do loans, we give money. And in addition, we will be motivating funds through the European Investment Bank. This investment bank, which is the world's oldest development bank, it is a not-for-profit bank, offers funds for relevant infrastructural projects. And I should underline that in addition to the money, there's also gigantic technical expertise available through the European Investment Bank and through the European institutions. What is also new at this time is that in November 2021, the European Union established a deforestation regulation. This gives an advantage, in fact, to reforestation. Europeans have concerns because 16% of the world's rainforests have been destroyed to provide European consumers with beef, palm oil, soya, coffee, and cocoa. In the case of Trinidad and Tobago, 40% of the rainforest remains, but all cocoa producers in this country will have the opportunity to cultivate cocoa, safe in the knowledge that, in fact, they're doing reforestation where they are reclaiming land that might have been used for other purposes, but safe also in the knowledge that for them to achieve rainforest certification for the production of cocoa is a certainty. The planting of cocoa estates in this country where sugarcane has been cultivated historically or where other crops have been cultivated is in fact restoring the natural order here. It'll help to restore the ecosystem. And not only can we think about the benefits that investors will have in terms of the cocoa production, there's also the benefits in future ecotourism opportunities where foreign tourists may come and tour cocoa estates here together with the other magnificent flora and fauna that exist on these unique islands. We consider at this point in time that TT's cocoa is a real value investment opportunity, and we consider this fulfills all corners of the square, the people, planet, and profit paradigm. So with this, I really wish to underline that our commitment to this country has taken place over 45 years. We're extremely happy with all of the collaborations we've had with this country, and that we look forward to another long continued partnership with all of the actors and all of the participants, including to this webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. And I just want to direct everyone's attention to the chat. You will see some information from our colleagues at the European Union. If you want to get more information on some of the initiatives that His Excellency addressed in his presentation, they have provided links to get more information, for example, on Erasmus Plus and some of those other initiatives. So just scroll through the chat box and you will see what our colleagues at the EU delegation have placed there for us. And we look forward to quizzing His Excellency and all the panelists a little later on during the session this morning. I now must share with you our second poll question for the morning. And it is, what is your primary area of interest? What is your primary area of interest? Is it in land investments, joint venture partnerships, production, processing, and value-added products? Or is it in B2B opportunities with European chocolatiers? So poll question number 2, what is your primary area of interest in cocoa? Please respond to the poll, and we'll move on very quickly now to our third panelist this morning. And this is a gentleman that everyone is going to be excited to hear from, because he is the director of the Cocoa Research Center at the University of the West Indies, Professor Pathamanathan Umaharan. He is responsible for policy, strategic direction, and governance of the Cocoa Research Center. And he is an expert in plant genetic resources management, genetic analysis, and crop improvement. And from the scientific and research and development standpoint, if anyone is going to help secure the future of Trinitario Cocoa, it's Professor Umaharan and his team. Professor, you have the floor.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to share my screen. Give me a minute. Honorable Ministers, Your Excellency, the European Ambassador, fellow panelists, it's indeed a pleasure to be here today to make a presentation on some of the work we are doing to support the local cocoa and chocolate industry. I call this presentation Mainstreaming Innovations to Nurture a Local Cocoa and Chocolate Industry. So let's go straight in. I have been given 5 minutes for my opening statement, and I have only 4 talking points. I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about the Cocoa Research Center that I lead. I'm going to talk about what we are doing with regard to mainstreaming innovations. I call this the push strategy, pushing innovations into societies. Then I'm going to talk about the innovative investment environment we are trying to support, to build. And this we call the pull strategy, creating the demand for innovations. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the work that we are doing in supporting marketing into niche markets. So just to talk about the Cocoa Research Center. Cocoa Research Center is one of the oldest research centers in the world, having been established 90 years ago. We work with most of the large chocolate companies in supporting their research needs. So we have research programs which are national, regional, and international. As the ambassador had mentioned, we also are the custodians of the International Cocoa Gene Bank, which is regarded as the largest and most diverse collection of cocoa varieties. We produce genetic resources, and we supply to most of the cocoa growing countries around the world. So in many ways, we consider ourselves as giving the varieties to the world. We have also been instrumental in setting up a global DNA fingerprinting program that supports the identification of cocoa varieties around the world. The third part of our work has been in developing the International Fine Cocoa Innovation Center, again, with, as the ambassador said, with support from the European Union through a grant we got from the EU ACP Science and Technology Fund. I'm going to talk about this in a few minutes. So that's so the Cocoa Research Center has a seamless transition from genetic resources, which provides us the comparative advantage, the research capacity that allows us to produce technologies and innovations, and then the outreach arm, which is the International Fine Cocoa Innovation Center, that allows us to transfer these technologies or mainstream these technologies to stakeholders. So I'm going to talk about the first thing is about seeding innovations. And we call this the push strategy, because we are trying to develop innovations to support businesses along the entire value chain. So when we talk about innovations, it's not only technological, but also social and business innovations, so that the companies that invest in Trinidad and Tobago can become successful. The research system does not only include the Cocoa Research Center. We have another university called the University of Trinidad and Tobago. We have other research facilities at the Ministry of Agriculture and so on. So we try to work in a very collaborative way to build these innovations. The Innovation Center that we have set up also is about developing models and showcasing these models. So if you come to the Innovation Center, you will see a model cocoa orchard We have post-harvest processing facilities, modern facilities. We have a model chocolate factory and so on that allows us to really develop training programs to transfer these innovations to local entrepreneurs. So we offer apprenticeship training programs, master classes in chocolate making. We also provide business and technology incubation. We produce a range of intermediary products to support businesses, particularly small businesses. And we offer a number of technology services, including certification services, traceability support, and so on. And this particular setup is really to galvanize the public sector, the private sector, and the university so that we can develop this industry. So we call this a triple helix approach, bringing the club, all the people in the puzzle so that we can build this industry forward. This is a picture of some of the innovation centers, some of the work that we do. As I told you, it's a university public-private sector interface. It's an interface to supply innovations to investors. We do business incubation, technology incubation. We have a model cocoa orchard. We do product development support, and we mainstream these through training programs, apprenticeship training, providing technology services, and technology incubation. And then that is called the push strategy. But then in the other hand, you need to create a demand for these innovations. And that means you need to attract investors to put money behind these, the industry so that these innovations can be used. And part of this, again, has to involve public, private, and the university. So I'm not going to talk too much about the government interventions because there are two ministers who are here who are much more versed in being able to talk about this. And I just want to say a little word about the private sector. I think the European Union is investing innovation funds to support innovations in the private sector to be able to galvanize niche markets and so on. So I think that is happening as well. But I'm going to talk a little bit more about what the university's role is. And when I say university, I'm talking about the entire university system and the research system that exists in Trinidad and Tobago. One of the things that we are doing is that we have divided the country into agroecological zones and the agroecological zones into 44 cocoa growing communities. And we are mapping the soil, the nutritional profiles, the climate conditions, the risks associated with these communities, the potentials of the communities, the constraints that have been affected in the communities, and so on. So we can have a comprehensive map of these communities so that when investors come in to this country to invest, or local investors invest in the countries, they go with their eyes wide open. And this also allows us to provide nuanced technology services to the different parts of the countries. And it's also going to help government to be able to really streamline support to various communities in the region. So I think this is something that we were very proud of, that we are building. This is the first of its kind internationally. And being a small country, I think we could become a model for cocoa industries around the world. The third and final thing that I want to talk about is about building a niche marketing system to support the local investors to get into the international market scene. And you will know that there's a burgeoning bean-to-bar market industry. And Trinidad and Tobago, with its reputation for high-quality chocolates, has an enormous potential to get into these niche markets. And therefore, investors we need to support these investors by helping them to create the USPs, or your unique selling propositions, so they can get into these markets. In addition to that, we need to create novelty chocolate products, not only just chocolates, but other products, nutraceuticals, cosmeceuticals, and so on, and building the sort of retail chain to support investors to make the best money out of those investments. Experiential tourism is also something that's very important. We would like to brand Trinidad and Tobago as the chocolate island so that tourists come to Trinidad to experience the entire value chain, experience the chocolates that we have to offer, and also experience the model that we are building as a ESG compliant, climate resilient cocoa system in Trinidad and Tobago. Now, if you want to really support investors to go into those markets, we need to be able to help them with developing novelty products. So we have a very strong product development department that works on helping entrepreneurs to develop new kinds of products that they can go into the international markets. We also we provide support on branding with regard to geographical indications and various kinds of branding, and supporting these brands with certification and traceability so that these brands have trust value. We are also very much interested in working on the environmental, social, and governance systems. And this is why we are working with communities so that when you invest, you also have a strategy to brand your product as socially and environmentally sustainable products. We are very much interested in looking at the carbon footprints in different parts of the country and how to mitigate it. And we have developed a flavor map for Trinidad and Tobago. And you could see that different parts of Trinidad offers different kinds of flavors, some parts with extremely floral types and other parts with fresh fruity flavors and other parts with brown fruit flavors. So even though it's a very small country, Trinidad and Tobago, we offer a wide range of flavors. So that said, I think we are here well poised to support investors, local as well as foreign investors, in becoming prosperous. We said we will help to develop innovations to get our comparative advantages pragmatically available. We will develop and mainstream innovations. We call this the push strategy. It increases efficiency along the value chain. We also will help create the innovative investment environment. The government has a role to play, the private sector has a role to play, but the university and the research system will help. And this is called the pull strategy. And finally, we will be also assisting in terms of nuanced branding and marketing so that our entrepreneurs can get into niche markets. And lastly, I would like to say building partnerships is extremely important. And having said that, I would like to end my presentation and look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Umaharan, for your presentation this morning. And I know that there are several people who are looking forward to engaging with you during the question and answer session this morning. I too have noted a couple interesting questions that I want to put to you in a little while. It is time for the third poll question that we have for you during the session today. And this one is very simple. Are you aware that TNT, Trinidad and Tobago, is home of the world's largest and most diverse public collection of cocoa plant material? Are you aware Trinidad and Tobago is home of the world's largest and most diverse public collection of cocoa plant material? Yes or no? Very simple. So please respond to our poll. And it is now my pleasure and my honor to introduce our next panelist. She is Senator the Honorable Paula Gobi-Scoon, the Minister of Trade and Industry. And she is leading a team of people whose focus is to position this country as a manufacturing base and the business, trade, and financial hub of the Caribbean. Today's session is pivotal to her mandate to lead the sustainable economic diversification of Trinidad and Tobago and its export thrust as well. Without further ado, Madam Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Jessamine. And let me acknowledge my colleagues. And please pardon the full protocol, Senator Rambarat, Excellency Cavendish, Franco Costello, Chairman, Professor Umaharan, very distinguished guests, members of the media, all those who are listening. Good morning, all. And I'm very pleased to participate in this very first episode in the 2022 Trinitario Cocoa Webinar Series under the theme Exploring Opportunities in a Fine Flavor Cocoa Paradise. And our collaboration with the delegation of the European Union to host this three-part Trinitario Cocoa Webinar Series demonstrates government's commitment to strengthening commercial relations with the EU and underscores the priority placed on diversifying the economy through the creation of an enabling environment for domestic and foreign investors in the non-energy sector. Trinidad and Tobago has an historic and enviable reputation for producing some of the world's finest cocoa beans and with an exceptional flavor profile. Our Trinitario chocolates are unique and much sought after. And notably, Trinitario has garnered 8 wins at the prestigious International Chocolate Awards between 2010 and 2019, followed by 2 more over 2020, 2021, and then another 3 awards at the 2021 Cocoa of Excellence Awards. And in our national trade policy, 2019 to 2023, the agriculture and agro-processing industries, specifically cocoa, have been identified as a strategic commodity with untapped potential, well-positioned to attract domestic and foreign value investors, generate foreign exchange, and contribute to diversification. In 2021, the value of Trinidad and Tobago's cocoa exports was over $5 million TT, an increase of 5% from 2020. And these exports would be raw and roasted cocoa beans, unsweetened cocoa powder, and cocoa butter. However, annual export revenues in 2021 for chocolate and other food preparations containing cocoa recorded a 33% increase from the previous year and were valued at almost 117 million. But understanding some of the figures that we heard this morning about the world market, we still have this evidences that we have a long way to go and there is a market to fill. This includes markets in the Caribbean, North America, Latin America, Asia, and very importantly, Europe. And I would really like to recognize the importance of our EU and UK economic partnership agreements, which allow our cocoa products to enter 27 EU countries and the UK duty-free, allowing local cocoa manufacturers a significant opportunity to boost their exports. In fact, the EU is CARICOM's second largest cocoa market, and this is in a market which was valued at $46 billion in 2020. Bear in mind that the global cocoa industry earned approximately $136 billion US in 2020 and is expected to earn approximately $192 billion US by 2028. So that the increase in demand for assurances of quality and traceability of the origin of cocoa from the international market creates a unique opportunity for Trinidad and Tobago to capitalize on the trade and investment opportunities that exist. Working together with cocoa farmers and artisans, producers and entrepreneurs, the government is providing the necessary support and incentives to ensure a sustainable and viable industry that is locally based and internationally renowned. It is government's hope that our manufacturers can continue to make their presence known in the global premium chocolate markets, not only as a supplier of primary products, but with high value and high quality finished products as well. To ensure that our cocoa is competitive in the global market, the Trinidad and Tobago Bureau of Standards has developed 2 standards for sampling and specification and quality requirements. And these national standards, which are based on the International Organization for Standardization, were designed to improve the quality of our locally grown cocoa beans, improve our access into international markets, and ultimately develop an internationally known brand for Trinidad and Tobago's cocoa and chocolates. So that we are confident that the partnership with the European chocolatiers, investors, and local cocoa stakeholders will be one that is mutually beneficial. And it is my hope, therefore, that this webinar will set the stage for further engagement in respect of joint ventures and investment opportunities to build on the unique strengths and successes of Trinidad and Tobago's cocoa industry. I really wish all of you a productive and successful event. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Minister. And Madam Minister, just to give you a heads up, some of the questions coming in the Q&A, there are people who want to know, how to access all the different investment opportunities that you and your team at InvesTT have been creating so that they could get in on the ground on this tremendous opportunity for Trinitario Cocoa. So we'll be putting those questions to you a little later on in the session this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for poll question number 4. And the question is, would you like a follow-up meeting with InvesTT? Would you like a follow-up meeting with InvesTT? An investment officer is standing by. So if you say yes, they will be getting in touch with you to make that meeting possible. So that's our 4th and final poll question for the session this morning. Now it's time for us to bring on our final panelist, and he is Senator the Honorable Clarence Rambarat, the Minister of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries, an attorney at law. He also is a government senator leading government's business in the Senate and also heading up the Legislative Review Committee in the Cabinet. He has worked in several industries, including in sugar manufacturing, healthcare, oil and gas, and international banking and finance. So he is well able to lead the development of our cocoa industry alongside his parliamentary colleague, Minister Gopi Skoon. Without further ado, Mr. Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Jesse. Good morning, and thanks to my colleague, Senator Paula Gopi Skoon, for an excellent presentation and previous presenters. Ms. Costello, Ambassador Cavendish, my friend and colleague, Professor Pat, Professor Uma. I want to go back to my very first contribution I made as a minister on cocoa, and go back to a comparison I made then to say that cocoa parallels our history in the region, and in Trinidad and Tobago in particular, our history with West Indies cricket. And like the West Indies team, there was a time when our production was significant and we were amongst the best in the world. But like the West Indies cricket team, we could not sustain that. And we could not sustain the production because of a variety of reasons, part of which was the industrialization of the country. But most importantly, and I want you to remember this, most importantly, cocoa suffered in Trinidad and Tobago because of the migration of labor from the estates to other activities, initially road building, when the US came to Trinidad and occupied Chaguaramas, and I say occupied, and developed the infrastructure. Labor migrated from the eastern coast into the construction and quarrying and those activities, and then into the industrialization program in Point Pisas. I say that to say that we talk about doing a lot of things. We talk about increasing production, planting, rehabilitating, and so on, without recognizing that the drivers of that were the farming families who were involved in cocoa and involved in the export of cocoa. That's one. And without recognizing that up until 2014, a planter and a producer of cocoa beans in Trinidad and Tobago never had to engage the international market. There existed an intermediary in the form of the Cocoa and Coffee Industry Board that took beans from wherever it was cultivated, graded it, and placed it on the international market, giving guarantees all along the way in terms of a guaranteed price to the cocoa farmers. So that any discussion on cocoa and the future of cocoa in Trinidad and Tobago must revolve around the discussion on who is going to plant these fields and who is going to harvest, who is going to produce the beans, and who is going to process. Those are very important considerations, because as we celebrated our success in cricket. We were not looking at what our competitors were doing and the way they were infusing technology, the way they were infusing modern team management, skills development, and a number of different things that they were doing, particularly the Australians. And one day we found ourselves in the region filled with some of the best cricket talent in the world, but incapable of bringing the individual talents together to have a world-class team. And more than 2 decades later, we find ourselves in the same position in cricket. I think that is where we find ourselves in Cocoa also. But look at what happened in the recent IPL auction for players in the IPL league. A number of West Indians got in. In fact, when you look at the list of foreign-based players who did not get into the IPL, you see how well we've done for a small region. You see some big name players who did not get in, but a significant portion of our best talent, led by Nicholas Puran, who is one of the youngest players on the international circuit, who captains an international team. And you understand that West Indies cricket still has great individual talent. And when you look at Cocoa, you see the same thing. Despite the fragmentation, despite the history, despite the decline, our beans still maintain its fine flavor status. And some of our chocolates are world-class chocolates. So the individual successes remain. And if we have to advance, we have to advance on the basis of the individual successes we have and how do we take advantage of that. I've said it before that we need private sector investment. But the private sector investment has to be along the lines of a few things that Professor Uma not only identify, but I consider Professor Uma to be the expert on this in the region. And that has to do with a modern approach to plant selection. And that is why we have the project between UV and Mondelez in terms of bringing the technology to establish some level of predictability in the plant selection and the plant that is going to be used to develop any new fields that we have. Plant propagation, planting, the techniques, the spacing, the techniques for planting, a lot of things have changed and we have to evolve. And one of the things when you go to the International Cocoa Center, you would see the model farm and you would see what is recommended in terms of a modern cocoa field. The drying and processing, Professor Uma will tell you that a part of that, the rationale for that EU project in terms of establishing a modern processing facility is to create a model. Because what we've found that even though we grow the best beans, and there is very little dispute around that, what we do with the beans in terms of the drying and the processing and readiness for export really affects not only the quality of the beans, the marketability of the beans, but the price the beans attract. And when you move to the next level of the value added in terms of the chocolate and the other products, you will find that if the beans are not processed with the quality that it should, it affects the quality of the final product. So it's not just private sector investment, it is private sector involvement and investment around these things, from plant selection to value added along the value chain. And back then and now, and when I listen to my colleague, Minister Gopi Skoon, when I listen to Ambassador Cavendish, and when I listen to Professor Uma, I am back to what I said when I first spoke about cocoa as a minister, and that is we require convergence. Because in this environment where anybody coming to do business with us deals with a very fragmented system. And if you listen to Prime Minister's speech at the commissioning of the Nutrimix Modern Hatchery 2 days ago, you listen to what he says, and he talks about the infusion of private sector in the public sector, a modern management for the agricultural sector. And you hear him lament, and you hear my colleague Paula Gopi-Skoon lament, the best ideas and the best opportunities really suffer in the hands of a fragmented bureaucracy that we have. So that I'm back to the point of convergence. And it is time that we have a discussion among InvesTT, the Ministry of Trade and Industry, the Cocoa Research Center, Cocoa Development Company, and our ministry on this issue of convergence. Because if we have to take advantage of what the EU has on offer for us, and the treeing of Trinidad, the reforestation of Trinidad is not simply to expand cocoa cultivation, but to also extract a lot of benefits that comes from increasing your tree coverage in any country, particularly a country like ours. So there is a significant amount of value in us coming back to the table to discuss convergence, because if we have to access what the EU has to offer, we have to access it, approach it on the basis of a common front. And that common front is convergence among the Cocoa Research Center, the Cocoa Development Company, InvesTT, the Ministry of Agriculture, and the Ministry of Trade and Industry. And if it's one minister always willing to give up to, I am that minister, because the less I have to manage, the better it is for me to focus. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister Rambarat, for your presentation this morning. And ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of the presentations from our panelists. Thank you so much for participating in the poll questions. And also, I want to say hello to many of our participants. I see people hailing from Brazil, from the UK. I believe there are a couple of people from Belgium who have tuned in to today's session. So a warm, sunny Trinidad and Tobago welcome to each and every one of you. Now it's time to engage in a bit of discussion with our panelists. And what I'll be doing, I'll be sharing with you some of the questions that have been coming through from the Q&A, and also some that I also have at the top of my brain. I want to start with Ambassador Cavendish. And there are a couple of points that you would have made during your presentation that we need further clarification on. One of them, well, they all are tied to the legislative agenda, particularly the environment and that new law that's been put in place to protect rainforests. Could you elaborate on that?
Yes, indeed, and thank you for that question. The law has come into place in last November, and it's to be rolled out, where countries will have to prove that in the recent periods, the products that they're exporting to Europe, be it beef, soya, coffee, cocoa, are not resulting from areas where the rainforest has been cleared and destroyed in the recent period. The people who have to do this will not be able to export to Europe if they cannot certify that the rainforest has not been destroyed. These products are not a result of rainforest destruction. In this country already, we have colleagues, cooperatives, who have achieved rainforest certification in the past. And this is already existing in this country, where rainforest certification for cocoa production has met the European requirements. And we can be confident that other cocoa cultivation in this country will also meet that rainforest certification. I understand that in general, not just I understand that in general, a great many of the cocoa plantations have reached a certain age and require replanting. And for me, I think for investors, if I was an investor and I had a choice to replant, would I replant in Trinidad and Tobago, where it's effectively a restoration of the original rainforests? And as the minister has said, there are benefits much more than just cocoa. It's climate, it's ecological. So this rainforest regulation, I think, is an incentive for people to consider Trinidad and Tobago, which is the home of Trinitario, the world's best cocoa plant. And we know that because everybody else is using it. It's used all across the world, but that plant has come from this country, and it's this country's original ecosystem that gave rise to the world's best cocoa. So I consider that this new legislation, this new regulation, which came into force in November of last year, is a factor that producers should consider for their investment purposes. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Ambassador. And I just want to follow up with something that you said with Professor Umaharan. he talked about, rehabilitating the plantations, replanting the rainforests. And we have a couple of questions looking at that whole issue of what size of acreages are we looking at? What is it going to take to rehabilitate them? And even some further clarification on the issue of geographical indicators as well. Professor Umaharan.
Thank you for that question. Yes, let me start with the first with regard to the size of acreage. I think we encourage farmers of all sizes to be able to engage in cocoa production. That if you are operating as a single trader of beans only, then you will need a fairly large acreage to be economically viable. But if you go vertically integrated and you want to produce chocolates and do retailing at the same time, you could work with very small acreages. So again, the question depends really on your business model that you would like to operate. So that the second is that there's also opportunities for you to collaborate with other small farmers. There are cooperatives that work with small farmer cooperatives that come together and they sort of bulk their products so they can market into the international markets, or they could also go into value addition cooperatively. So even for small farmers, there are opportunities. For large farmers, of course, because of their size being large, they would be economically viable on their own. They could also work with small farmers around them. So there are different business models that can work. And we have actually looked at about 5 business models as part of a project that we did in the past. And it offers a lot of flexibility in terms of investing. So the second question is about branding. The geographical indications is one way of branding our cocoa. Geographical indication could be at the country level, as Trinidad and Tobago as a brand, and we could market, or it could be at the level of a geographical area. And as I shared the flavor map of Trinidad, we find different parts of Trinidad having distinctive flavors. So farmers in that area could collaborate and produce beans or chocolates with a specific flavor. So that's called geographical indication. You brand it as a group. And or you could do branding at the estate level. So that's called estate branding. So you can brand at the estate level. Your estate itself has its unique selling propositions. You could map it out, and then you can create demand for it. Or some people even brand their variety. They have a particular variety that has a particular taste profile. So there's enormous opportunities of branding your product. Geographical indications, as I mentioned, was only one.
Thank you very much, Professor, for your response. I want to switch the focus now to Minister Rambarat. Minister, we know that your ministry has been engaging in an exercise to secure land tenure for our farmers, whether they are in the cocoa industry or not. And we just wanted to get an update on how advanced that exercise is, because we know that agriculture and agri-processing are pivotal in our economic diversification, sustainable economic diversification thrust in TNT.
Thank you very much, Jessie. Well, I'll tell you, it's at 3 levels really. The first is that we had a Caroni visa program, which was supported by the European Union as part of the transition out of sugar for the ACP countries. And the financial contribution made by the European Union was meant to facilitate the transition out of sugar into some other type of agriculture activity. And I would be the first to say it has not gone the way it should have. But the basic commitment there is that we distribute former Caroni 1975 limited land to former Caroni workers in the first instance and give them the opportunity to get into agriculture or increase the agriculture that they had been in. But in 2019, when I did an exercise to see what is happening on those plots. Just over 7,000 2-acre plots. I reported to the country that I found that there was at most agriculture activity on 16% of those plots, which means that we ought to have available to us upwards of 5,000 agriculture plots. And if we enforce the covenants, which require that there be agriculture on those plots, if we enforce the covenants, then we might be able to make more agricultural land available to the rest of the population. That is one, and that is entirely in the hands. The cabinet has done its work, and I've done my work as minister, and it's entirely in the hands of the Commissioner of State Lands and the Estate Management Development Company to execute, because they are the landlords in respect of those lands. On the other side is the traditional state lands, some of which, as you correctly pointed out, has been in agriculture, some of which has been in cocoa. And the backlog is so significant. You're talking about leases which have expired, or land which has been cultivated for 50, 60 years without any form of tenure. My colleague Minister Gopi Skun will tell you on average, the matters I bring to cabinet have been out there for more than 30 years, not attended to. So that what I've done is that I've dealt with those state land matters in 3 ways. I allow the bureaucracy to deliver files to me at their pace. Having been around the country in my first year and a half, I had just over 150 visits across the country meeting with farmers. I was able to energize farmers around the issue of land tenure, which I said is the #1 issue for the government. And out of that process, I continue to receive documents directly to me. There isn't a place that I go in Trinidad and Tobago. In fact, I went to the Art Society launch of its Carnival exhibition on Friday, and I left with information on 2 land matters. And the gathering there was 20. There were 20 persons there, out of which I extracted 2 land matters. So that's the second way in which members of the public engage me directly. And the third way is where people engage me on a sectoral basis. So for example, Minister Gopi Skun and I have ongoing discussion with Nestle on the issue of dairy production in Trinidad and Tobago and how we can stabilize it and improve it. We've made significant progress to the point that we now have a pool of 100 dairy farmers who can supply to Nestle on a consistent basis. But having established that pool, I asked Nestle to assist me in getting a letter out to those persons, asking them what was the state of their land tenure. And the response was overwhelming. I got almost 100% response. And most of those persons do not have tenure. So I'm able now to focus on that segment, knowing that despite what people say, I know that land tenure is the #1 issue in agriculture. Labor is the #2 issue. So that is where we're going in terms of renewing leases, regularizing and granting new leases. But parallel to that, since 2015, we've been on our own digital transformation project to modernize the way we manage state lands and the relationship with our stakeholders, our leaseholders in particular. And we are at the critical stage now where we actually making the decision on the software that we're going to use to run the system. We've done significant amount of groundwork in terms of designing the new system, in terms of digitizing files, and a lot of things that have to be done before you develop the public interface to the infrastructure. And that is a parallel, and that forms part now of the national digital transformation. And in 2022, we're going to make significant progress along the lines of deploying the technology. So it is significant work. If I may tell you this in the context of between state land, Caroni, I also have some responsibility for what happens in some of the LSA projects and HDC projects, UDCOT projects, and a former Petrotrin and legacy oil and gas companies and so on, you're talking about in excess of 300,000 paper files that you have under management, some 60 and 70 years old. But I believe that we're on the right trajectory, and I believe we've made significant progress. And I believe amongst many things, the farmers have confidence that their files are going to be addressed.
Thanks very much for clearing up that issue for us, Minister. I'm going to address my next question now to Minister Gopi Spoon. And we just heard from your parliamentary colleague discussing the regularization of the land tenure situation. I know that there have been innovations for entrepreneurs to access funding to be able to bring to fruition their enterprise idea, particularly in this area of agro-processing and agribusiness. We saw what happened this week with the facility that would have been opened up. I think it's with a chicken processor. Are we seeing similar opportunities opening up for the cocoa industry? And in fact, what other sweeteners can we expect to see coming from government to create that facilitatory environment that we would need to really get the industry, booming, as it were?
Thank you again, Jessie. And the sweeteners associated with the Ministry of Trade and Industry, but more be that which is available to the chocolate producers, the value added. But I have to say that we have assisted through the Research and Development Fund at ExportTT with funding, for example, a geographical indication exercise for the Montserrat cocoa farmers. In addition to which, the Ministry of Agriculture, Lands and Fisheries also has grants available to entrepreneurs to the extent of 100,000. Minister will guide you on the process, so you may find that on the web. In addition to which, Ministry of Agriculture, Lands and Fisheries also has the necessary capability for any involvement in a public-private venture. That may be large scale, for which the realities would be substantial in terms of exports and so on. So that apart, as I said before, for those involved in the chocolate industry, what we have is a grant fund facility, which is available to a number of non-energy sectors, but it's also available to the agro-processing sector. So it helps with the investment in technology, machinery and equipment, software development to expand output and to increase exports and grow competitiveness. And we've done several of these grant funding facilities where the grant is to the extent of 50% and the investor would supply the other 50%. And we have had chocolatiers benefiting from this grant fund facility, but not enough applicants, I will tell you. Then, of course, there's a research and development facility, which was accessed by, I think it was the Montserrat Cocoa Farmers Cooperative, and also by Trinidad and Tobago Fine Cocoa, just examples. That R&D facility really provides funding to a maximum of $1 million, again, for innovation, technology, and the entire, up to commercialization, that this is available for the development of a prototype. So bringing into being new products, processes, technologies, and so on. This is administered by ExportTT, and it's again up to $1 million. We again are not seeing enough participants looking to benefit from this R&D facility. Then, of course, there are the co-financing facilities that are available at ExportTT. And that really deals with, again, up to 50%, up to a total cost of $35,000 in any calendar year. But the areas of assistance would be in product and company registration in overseas markets, intellectual property registration in overseas markets, again, product testing, shipping of samples, translation, interpretation of export-related documents, participation in trade shows, label design modification, and so on. And that kind of co-financing arrangement is available through Export-TT. And then we have this done through our Export Booster Initiative, $20 million on an international certification fund. Again, we want to invite further agro-processors, including future chocolate processors, to participate in this certification fund. Again, to enter the markets that we spoke about earlier, you have to ensure that international standards are met, and so that this international certification program would assist you with building capacity. And I can tell you 100% financing for the new entrants. And of course, it's tiered differently depending on the scale of the business that is looking to participate in this certification fund. But it's for building capacity in the conduct of standards audits, inspections, implementation of the process of certification, acquisition of all of the specialized equipment that will be required for the adoption of standards, infrastructural modifications to comply with standards implementation, and of course the necessary auditing and certification costs. And this goes up to $500,000 per participant in this international certification fund. So we've had quite a few applications, but no chocolatiers have entered this particular fund for assistance. Then there are exporter trading programs, again, to increase the export competitiveness of firms, bolster export-oriented businesses, and increasing access to new markets. So again, the participants will be provided with the tools to implement an effective export strategy and the skills to venture into these new markets and export and generate export leads, etc. That too is done by Export-TT. There is also the, again, in terms of an economic space in which to operate, there is the $90 million Moruga agro-processing and light manufacturing park, for which tenants would be able to enter into a moratorium in the first instance, but secure tenancy arrangements at really very reasonable rates. And to date, we have secured tenants, yes, in fruit and vegetable processing and pepper processing and so on, but we also now have a chocolatier, someone who has signed a lease at the Moruga Agro-Processing and Light Manufacturing Park, and we are working with him to see where else we can assist with funding arrangements to get the entire processing facility up. And of course, in the very near future, you would have heard us talking about the special economic zones regime. And yes, it may appear that this speaks to big business, but it's also for small business as well, and new market entrants, and it really provides a framework, an investment framework for strategic sectors. And this framework will allow for fiscal benefits in terms of corporate income tax, although anybody involved in the agro-processing and agriculture sector will not pay tax. It's a zero tax regime, but then definitely in the special economic zones, there will be fiscal benefits in terms of VAT, customs duties, etc., and other allowances and credits that will encourage reinvestment and research and development. There are non-fiscal incentives, again, that include an enhanced operating environment through harmonized and efficient regulatory approvals. And it brings us back to the point of that Minister Rambarat made about convergence. So there are benefits in both ministries, and I think we really do have to get to the point where there's accessibility, and anybody wishing to participate in any of these benefits can easily access and see through a portal what is available and how can I access it. And that also we're working on that particular portal, which would provide that kind of information. It's going through the hoops a little bit faster.
Madam Minister, thanks very much for such a comprehensive reply. And I do hope that our participants were taking notes Of course, you can always visit the ministry's website to get some more detail on some of those initiatives that the minister would have outlined in her response. My next question, I'm going to put it to the president of InvesTT, Sekou Alain, and it's double-barreled. I want to find out, in terms of our initiative to patent or brand Trinitario Cocoa as being exclusively from this country, as opposed to other parts of the world where, you know, a similar product is being grown, that we are able to brand that. Just as sparkling wine is known as champagne only from Champagne in France. How advanced is that initiative? And will that also play a role into promoting cocoa tourism that we've heard alluded to by a couple of our presenters in the discussion this morning?
Thank you very much, Jessie May. And I think it's a great question. We do want to reap the rewards or the benefits and advantages of our unique selling proposition and the quality of cocoa that we have by branding that cocoa as part of the packaging of the investment opportunities for those that would seek to benefit from the processing of the cocoa and the production of that cocoa. And so we will be working very closely with the UWI Research Center and Professor Umaharan and his team to engage in that branding exercise and move it forward to ensure that we are able to reap and keep those benefits, and so that those who are consuming the chocolates and consuming the end products that are coming out of that cocoa are where that cocoa is originating from. The professor may want to give a little bit more information on where we are with that branding exercise. However, I think from the InvesTT standpoint, we are currently ready and willing and able to work with those investors that are interested in the opportunities that you will see that we've just posted in our cocoa development brochure in the chat, and is on our website. The link is there. And so some of those opportunities in the cultivation of cocoa, and so increasing the production of cocoa, as well as the processing of that cocoa for exports and accessing the support, training, technological and funding support that are coming from the Ministry of Trade and Industry that the minister would have just outlined for us, coming from the EU as well, that the EU ambassador outlined from us, as well as the technological and training support coming from the UWI Research Center.
Thanks very much, Mr. Alain. I want to address my next question to Ambassador Cavendish. Ambassador, I must ask this question. I would be remiss if I did not. We're looking at the news, we're seeing what's happening in Europe, the tensions that are rising there. Yes, the talks are ongoing, and we know that once the talks stop, we need to be worried. But this is, you know, an amazing opportunity for both our territories with regard to cocoa. And how is that going to be affected? You know, what's being put in place to sort of, you know, box that out from what's taking place right now? I may not have articulated well, but you get where I'm coming from.
Yes, indeed. I believe that the re-establishment or the growth in this industry will take place over a 1 to 3 and a 3 to 5 year horizon. The current problems in Europe, we hope that they will not deteriorate, but nonetheless, there are very high level political engagements underway. We have to see what comes out of this exercise. But I think at the moment we are in a wait and see phase. We have to see how it's going to happen. And I think that the high level of political engagement should lead in a resolution of these problems. In terms of what we're trying to do here today, basically we're trying to point out to all of the potential investors the value-added investment opportunity that exists in this country. Trinidad and Tobago cocoa sells for $5,500 to $7,500 a ton. I'm informed by one university that premium cocoa can reach up to $12,000 a ton. Investors who are looking here today, and basically we wish to bring in foreign investment, none of the investments here are going to be endangered by any of the political upsets that may take place in Europe. And at this point in time, really, we have to take a medium-term perspective on investing in the world's best cocoa, in the world's original ecosystem here in this chocolate island. And certainly Europeans will benefit, perhaps if they get a bit stressed by having a bit more of the quality chocolate available to them. Europeans are concerned about the political state. They're also concerned about the environment. And here, reforestation will lower the carbon footprint. Europeans wish to be ethical in what they're doing. And there are all of the ingredients from Kariri to UWI to the Cocoa Research Center to the genome. This is a unique place where there's a unique conglomeration of all the elements necessary to produce higher volumes of what is already the world's best cocoa. So the political matters are a matter of deep concern. We do not wish, obviously, to see any new conflict in Europe. I have to mention that the whole purpose behind the European Union originally was to avoid that countries would ever go to war again. And I believe that we have, over many decades, proven the European Union works. We do certainly need to engage with the parties who are outside of Europe, but on the borders of Europe at this time. But I do not think that this is a matter for an investment concern at this point in time, given we need a 3 to 5 year horizon for investors really to reap the benefits of their rewards. But their rewards will last as long as the life of a cocoa tree. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for being so open in your response there. I want to address the issue of the environment and climate change, and of course, building in resilience. I think this goes to Professor Umaharan. Is the UWI examining the issue of climate impact, resilience, and innovations to address waste, product development, and future barriers to accessing markets, such as carbon footprinting, import regulations into the EU and North America. And I just want to tack on to that in terms of maintaining the quality and integrity of the Trinitario product itself. We heard from the Met Service this year. We're having a drier than dry season. We've been seeing wetter and more furious storms coming our way in our wet season. What does that mean for the quality and integrity of our product? And also, again, on the issue of being resilient to whatever climate impacts are coming our way, and ensuring as well that we meet our environmental obligations as well. Professor.
Very interesting question, or combination of questions. Yeah, I think, let me answer the first one, the climate change. Now, I think climate change is a very complex question. I think this is something that we have been addressing at the research level for some years now. And we are actually looking at it from different angles. One of the angles that we are looking at is in terms of developing new types of varieties that can withstand changes in climate. When you talk about changes in climate, it can be different things. For instance, it could refer to drought in some cases. Sometimes, it results in sea level rise, which can lead to salinity problems, saltwater intrusion. It might lead to sea level rise can lead to flooding problems being aggravated as a result. How would that affect the cocoa industry? By changing of the climate, the diseases can become much more prevalent, certain diseases, and how is that going to be addressed, and so on. So these different questions have different answers, right? So I think, so we are working in different projects to address this in terms of identifying types that can withstand drought is one of the things that we are looking at. But at the same time, we are also looking at the climate smart agriculture practices that farmers can do on an everyday basis to minimize the impact of changes in climate that is happening, or we are already starting to experience in Trinidad and Tobago. We are also interested in mapping, as you said, the carbon footprint of cocoa estates in different parts of the country, understanding the drivers for carbon sequestration, drivers for carbon footprint, and so on. And once you know that, then we could advise farmers to operate in certain ways to minimize that, because that offers an enormous potential to market our products as well. Because if you have low carbon footprint or better sequestration of carbon, that gives you a unique advantage in marketing your produce. So these are all things that we are very interested in addressing. Some of it we have applied for grants to support some of the work that we are doing, and so on. Some of them we are doing in collaboration with global industries and so on. So I think it's very interesting and so on. The second question you came to is with regard to the quality of Trinitario cocoa and the ways in which we can protect our cocoa. Now, Trinitario cocoa evolved in Trinidad. It was a combination, a natural occurrence in which hybridization occurred between two different types of cocoa that created this unique combination of cocoa that has these very strong chocolate flavors, at the same time has these finer flavors like fruity, floral, nutty, creamy, and so on. So, and that has made the Trinitario an important part of the fine or flavor cocoa industry. A lot of the Trinitario cocoa over the years has grown all over the world. It is being grown in many countries. Many of the fine flavor cocoa producing countries also grow Trinitario cocoa, just like Trinidad. But Trinidad has a special advantage of the growing environment and the varieties that we have. So, and that is why I think we are looking at opportunities to see geographical indications being applied in Trinidad, where different parts of the country produces unique flavors that can be really marketed, and so on. So, so we need to look at it very in an open way, because there are different ways of marketing our cocoa uniquely in terms of our, not only the flavors, but the way we produce our cocoa, the sustainability of our systems. There's organic marketing opportunities and so on. So I think we need to really combine these together to create a brand, that allows us unique advantages.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Professor. I want to go very quickly to another question. This is trade related, and perhaps either Minister Gopi Schoon or Mr. Umaharan could respond to this. Speaking specifically now about the tariff-free arrangement for Trinidadian shipments into the EU, is that going to remain in effect? And in fact, apart from that, will we need to be signing any new agreements in order to improve the market access for our exporters, our cocoa exporters, whether it's the raw material or the refined product that we'll be exporting? Would we need to do any of that kind of work to get our product out there? I'm not sure who would want to take that question, whether it would be Minister Gopi Schoon or Minister Umaharan or even Mr. Alain. Who would want to respond?
Perhaps I can start it off. And certainly, so that I can say that Trinidad and Tobago is a party along with other CARI Forum members, that will be our CARICOM colleagues and the Dominican Republic, to an agreement with the EU where all goods can enter these 27 EU territories tariff-free. So that is already in place. We have signed on to that. I think I don't have the year at hand, and there's no other signing to take place except the ratification of the agreement. But that does not impact, or is not an impediment, into goods being exported to the EU tariff-free. So that is already there, but there are other factors which are important to note. Goods, not only goods, but services. But for any agricultural item entering to any other market except Trinidad and Tobago, there will be particular phytosanitary measures that have to be satisfied. There are also considerations of certification, so that it's not just it's an open market, so let's just send the goods or so. There are standards to be met, and therefore anybody having an interest in exporting any items under the CARI Forum EU agreement can certainly meet with the ministry or InvesTT, and they can supply them with the information that they need. And once it's an agricultural product, then of course there are other requirements, and that could be got from that can be gotten from the Ministry of Agriculture, Lands and Fisheries.
Do any of the other panelists wish to tackle on any further information in that regard?
I'd like to add that, in fact, Trinidadian chocolate is already going to Europe, for example, to Sweden, and including to non-European countries, non-European Union countries such as Switzerland. So there are Trinidadian producers of fine chocolate selling to Europe. I could name some of them. There are also chocolates are being sold to the United Kingdom. So this is something that's real and it happens and it's going ahead. But I think the Honourable Minister has very correctly outlined the matters.
Thank you very much. I have a question here very quickly for Minister Rambarat. And we do have someone asking about opportunities for cocoa on the island of Tobago in our Twin Island Republic. And what are the opportunities there for cocoa? And also, you in your presentation, you talked about, and also when I asked you about the land tenure issue, you talked about all the acreage that's available as well. If someone wanted to get that kind of detailed information, where could they go to get that?
Okay, thank you very much. On the issue of Tobago, well, Tobago has a separate arrangement. There is a Secretary for Agriculture in Tobago. So persons in Tobago can make inquiries at the THA, but the national programs for Trinidad and Tobago do in fact support what is happening on Tobago. So for example, our incentives are available to persons in Tobago, including our agri incentive and the support of the Cocoa Development Company and the other state agencies are available to anyone in Trinidad and Tobago. On the issue of land, any request for land is made to the Ministry's Land Management Division in El Socorro. That is where the Commissioner of State Lands is based. And from time to time, people also send requests to me, and when I get it, I will review it and involve the Commissioner of State Lands if it comes to that.
Thanks very much, Minister Rambarat. I want to bring Sekou Alain of InvesTT and Franco Costello as well, looking at the whole issue of economic diversification. Today we're spotlighting cocoa. Is there anything else that we can expect to see from the agriculture and agro-processing industry that InvesTT will be promoting and marketing very, very aggressively over the next, say, 18 to 36 months?
Thank you. Great question, Jessie May. And let me just say, as I mentioned in the opening remarks, that this is just the first of a couple of series of webinars on cocoa. And so there is a strong focus on cocoa and supporting cocoa investment opportunities, promoting those, and working with those that are interested, whether SMEs or otherwise, in partnering with the various stakeholders, all of which you've heard from today, in InvesTT really being the nexus of bringing all the benefits, the funding, the technical support, et cetera, together to ensure that we are able to realize those investment opportunities in the areas of cocoa. The Minister Gopi Schoon earlier would have also talked about the Moruga Agro-Industrial Park, which is really the focus of our promotional and development activity for the agricultural and agro-processing sector in Trinidad and Tobago. And we're making great strides with promoting that park for processing opportunities, not just in the cocoa areas, but root crops, fruits, and other areas as well. And we're seeing tendencies on those parks already start beginning. So I think the cocoa is, of course, one of the areas. We have a very high, unique selling proposition. We continue to promote the Moruga Agro-Industrial Park and promote new tenancies and other agro-processing industries there as well. We're also working with innovative agricultural production projects, one out of Tobago. We just mentioned Tobago, which is the project which will be using greenhouse technology to grow strawberries, something that is not native to the Caribbean climate, but we will be using technology, or that company will be doing so in Tobago to address some of our food importation issues in terms of food substitution. So InvesTT is really working at promoting and facilitating investments across the agro sector from the production standpoint and the processing standpoint. Of course, the focus here today is cocoa. And as I mentioned before, this is just the first in a series of bringing the investors together with all the various support mechanisms from the stakeholders that are here with us today.
And Ms. Costello, I know you want to add to what Mr. Alain has said, especially coming from the private sector as you do, and also being a past president of the Manufacturers Association.
Been exciting. The cocoa industry has always been deeply embedded into our history and our culture, and it resonates so well with across the agriculture industry. And now we're seeing that transition into the manufacturing industry with a lot of innovation happening. So a webinar of this type with 352 attendees is exciting to see the enthusiasm that is being put behind this industry in Trinidad. And there's so much potential for it to have a profound effect on the manufacturing industry, the export potential. And it's a great time for the investment climate in Trinidad in the cocoa industry, with all of the support that we're seeing behind the government right now in encouraging SMEs, entrepreneurship, manufacturing, agro-processing. And InvesTT is certainly well equipped and manned to encourage and support those types of investments as well into Trinidad and Tobago. I'm very enthusiastic to see what is going to come out of this, and I thank everybody for their enthusiasm as well in this industry and new opportunities to come from it.
We're practically out of time, but I must get this question in because it's been repeated in the Q&A and the general chat. People concerned about the labor issue, because we still have a vision in our mind that the cocoa industry is a very labor-intensive industry. I know that both ministers alluded to the labor issue. We even have someone suggesting that perhaps we can tap into our migrants who are resident here in Trinidad and Tobago and partner with them to give our cocoa industry a boost. Ministers, a quick final word from you on this issue. Minister Rambaran, perhaps we can start with you on the labor issue in the cocoa industry.
Well, I have one of the first engagements I had on cocoa with the Cocoa Research Center was a project that they had undertaken dealing with labor in the cocoa sector and the issue of shortages and the prospects of importing or making use of imported labor. Now we've had imported labor available, but only through the work permit system. And I'm also on record as saying the biggest boost to agriculture, particularly over the COVID-19 period, has been the availability of the Venezuelan labor. Now, the Venezuelan labor is suited to fisheries and most aspects of agriculture, but the cocoa farmers really want a better source of labor in the context, a more experienced source. And that is why some of them have accessed labor out of Ghana in particular, and some Cuban labor. So the Venezuelans have filled the gap for us, and it is what we're going to continue to rely upon going forward. Now we have in the Senate on sometime in March a CARICOM bill to debate, and that deals with an aspect of the free movement of labor, which includes agriculture workers, and a particular process that will allow agriculture workers from across the region to move in an easier manner. And those things would help. But I would say in relation to cocoa needs your normal laborer, but particularly in the harvesting of the cocoa and the tending of the trees, some experience is required.
Minister, thanks very much for your response. Minister Gopiskun, do you have a follow-up comment that you would like to share?
Sure. And you see, I think the cocoa industry could be considered as a sexy one from the point of view that it's just not about laboring in the vineyards, and laboring in the fields, but certainly in the value added. So that if you're interested in not just processing chocolate, there are other opportunities for entrepreneurs in terms of cosmetics and creams, cocoa nibs, and or cocoa alcohol products with the infusion of cocoa, brandy with cocoa, I've said that to the French ambassador, looking forward to that kind of product coming out from France, so that it's a myriad of opportunity there for entrepreneurs to get involved with. And so that I don't think we need people to be myopic to say, not me in the fields, but certainly the opportunities there in the value added and a myriad of products that are available for production and for export.
All right. Thank you very much, Madam Minister. And I have run out of time. I've run over my time. Sekou Elaine, thank you for being so gracious and giving me an extra 5 minutes. I now hand the floor over to you, Mr. President of InvesTT.
Thank you very much, Jessie May, and thank you to all the panelists, Minister Rambarat, Minister Gopi Schoon, Ambassador Cavendish, Professor Umaharan, Chair Costello, for your support and your participation. Thank you very much, Jessie May, for your moderation and your very insightful questions. And I would really want to thank the group that's here with us. We're just at a peak at about 370 participants, around 350 now. So most of you have stayed with us, and the chat has been quite active. I know Jessie would have gotten many of the questions from the chat group, and I've seen those joining us from Europe, seen those joining us from the UK, from Brazil. I've seen SMEs asking questions about how they can access the funding and the technical support that both ministers and the professor spoke about. I've seen those owning plantations or owning land that are asking how they can access support to revitalize those lands. I've seen those that have identified lands they are aware of and have asked questions about possibly revitalizing old sugarcane fields for cocoa. So certainly there has been a lot of interaction and engagement over the chat, and it demonstrates that there really is a high level of interest in this area, and certainly that is supported by the unique proposition that we have in the cocoa area. So I will just set some context for my following closing remarks by giving the results of the polls that you would have responded to earlier on, and Jessie May would have read out for you. The first poll being, do you have an investment interest in Trinitario Cocoa? And we have 38% said yes, that they do have that investment interest, and 42% said they are considering. So I see there, and I've seen in the chat group, that there are those who are already understanding where they can engage in the cocoa production, processing, supply chain, and supporting and exporting to European and other markets. And there are those who may just have an idea or are in the process of germinating an idea, again, with the connection to the stakeholders here that will be able to access those ideas and develop them into a real business opportunity. So certainly a lot of investment interest in the cocoa area. The second poll question coming directly off of that being, what is your primary area of interest? And we have the major area of interest would be processing and value-added products, 42%. So again, speaking to one of the immediate opportunities we have with the cocoa that we are producing is really the value add and the processing products that, as Ambassador Cavendish said, are already being exported into Europe and the UK. And with the support of Export-TT and other stakeholders, we can see increasing those exports moving forward. But certainly we had others that were also interested in production of cocoa. And so that's the next major opportunity, really revitalizing existing estates or identifying other lands that would be good for growing our high quality cocoa. And you would see in the cocoa development brochure that you would have downloaded, we've identified some lands for those activities, but certainly looking forward to further engagement around other lands and opportunities on production. Some are interested in joint venture partnerships, some in land investments, some may not already own the land and looking to invest in the land, and others in B2B opportunities. And certainly we're seeing a high level of investment interest across several areas in the cocoa supply chain. What I also saw in the chat group was others who mentioned that there were a couple options left out of the multiple choice, like the agro-tourism or the ecotourism area and aspect of cocoa as well. And so we see that, and of course you have connectivity into InvesTT to follow up on those investments as well. Our poll 3 was a question on, are you aware that Trinidad and Tobago is the home of the world's largest and most diverse public collection of cocoa plant material? And 70% of those that are here with us were aware, 30% weren't, but I'm sure those that were not aware are now aware. And certainly with the type of audience we have here and the catalytic impact of not just this webinar, but the series to come, we will ensure that most are aware of that. And finally, but not least, would you like a follow-up meeting with InvesTT? 64% said yes. And so to bring all aspects of this webinar together, we want to ensure that InvesTT plays that lead role in speaking to those that have immediate investment opportunities, those that want access to the support, the developmental, funding, technical, and other types of support from the ministries that we will be engaging with, as well as university and the EU funding that is available. And certainly we will be in contact with you so that we can ensure that you have that connectivity to continue developing the ideas that you have for investment in cocoa or gaining immediate access to the cocoa opportunities that we have in front of us now. And so with the awards, the certifications, the gene bank, the support from all the stakeholders here, our interest is to ensure that this all creates a nexus for increasing the investment stock in the production and processing, and of course the export of cocoa, so that we can realize the benefits of our unique value proposition in the cocoa area. And so again, I would like to thank the Minister Gopi Schoon, Minister of Trade and Industry, thank Minister Clarence Rambarat, Minister of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries, thank the Ambassador to the EU Delegation, Ambassador Cavendish, thank Professor Umaharan for his support from UE, and of course, thank the moderator, Jessie May. And thank you all for being here with us today, your level of engagement, interactivity, your questions. The entire session has been recorded. The link to the YouTube session has been placed on YouTube and has been placed in the chat. We will follow up with all attendees with the information from the seminar and provide, again, that very important connectivity through InvesTT to all the stakeholders here to get your projects going. So we're right at 11:56, right on time. Thank you all again for the first in the series of webinars, and look out for further communication on the dates for the next webinar that will be diving deeper into the specific investment opportunities in the cocoa land of Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you all very much. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, Jessie May. Thank you, attendees. Have a great rest of your morning and great rest of your day.